A middle-aged white man with a racist attitude slapped a young black woman without any reason, and he was shocked when she punched him back in the face. Maya leaned back in her seat, breathing a sigh of relief as the plane began preparing for takeoff. She had just finished a long work week and felt excited about this vacation, a family visit she had long awaited. As passengers started settling into their seats, Maya decided to rearrange her luggage in the overhead compartment right above her seat. Just as she lifted her suitcase, a middle-aged man with a scowl and furrowed brows suddenly shoved his way past, pushing Maya aside. Without even glancing at her, he took her luggage out, placing his own belongings there as if the space was his alone. Stunned, Maya looked at him, trying to stay calm and politely reminded, "Excuse me, but I had already placed my luggage here." The man turned to her, looking her up and down with contempt. His eyes radiated irritation mixed with disdain, as if she had done something wrong and inconvenient. "You should know your place," he said, his tone curt and full of disdain. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. His words were so sharp and cold that they hurt, making her feel wounded and unjustly targeted. She just wanted to rearrange her belongings without bothering anyone, but his words landed heavily on her sense of self-worth in the cramped and tense confines of the plane. Maya remained silent, looking around, realizing that several people had witnessed the scene but were keeping their heads down, unwilling to intervene. A sense of isolation and helplessness surged within her, knowing she had done nothing wrong. But the contempt in the man's eyes lingered, piercing her heart. The space felt like it was holding its breath, and as Maya tried to remind herself to stay calm, she still felt her pride bruised mercilessly. She took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger rising within, but just as she was about to speak again, a flight attendant approached, offering a small smile but quickly glancing at Maya with a look of judgment. "Is something wrong?" the attendant asked, but her gaze was directed toward the man, as if she was standing by for his response. Maya looked up, hoping for a bit of support from the flight attendant, but the smile quickly faded as the attendant turned back toward her, with an expression of mild annoyance. Before Maya could explain, the man interjected, "Oh, she's just making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing serious." His voice firm but laced with a hint of mockery, as if Maya was merely oversensitive and making a fuss. Maya pressed her lips together, resisting the urge to react immediately. But when the flight attendant turned back, she looked at Maya with a slight frown, her voice gentle but with a tone of implicit blame. "Ma'am, if it's not serious, I think it's best for you to keep quiet and not disturb the other passengers," the attendant said softly, but with an icy edge. Those words struck Maya once more, leaving her stunned. She realized the attendant had no intention of supporting her, and instead saw her as a source of trouble. Maya felt entirely isolated, with no one to listen to or understand the injustice she had just endured. She couldn't fathom why the attendant chose to side with the man, regardless of the truth. "But he took my space without even asking." Maya tried to keep her voice calm, speaking clearly, hoping the attendant would understand. But as soon as she finished speaking, the attendant frowned, tilting her head as if stifling a sigh. "Well, actually, the luggage space here is shared," the attendant replied, her voice soft yet carrying a chilly detachment. "You can find another spot if you're uncomfortable." She looked at Maya with a gaze that urged her to stop arguing and figure it out herself, leaving Maya feeling humiliated and abandoned amidst the stares of everyone around her. Maya's pride felt crushed again. She looked down, feeling as if both the man and the attendant had turned their backs on her, and now even the cramped space on the plane seemed to do the same. She felt suffocated, as if everything was piling onto her shoulders, and the passengers around her kept their heads down, ignoring it all, leaving her as the only one feeling breathless from the injustice taking place. Maya sat back down, swallowing her frustration. She could sense the man's triumphant gaze as he glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, as if he had just won some kind of victory. Right at this moment, Maya felt completely alone. In her mind, a simmering anger began to grow, mixed with a profound pain, the pain of facing injustice alone and powerless. She looked down, taking a deep breath to stay calm, but right then, the man turned back to her, his gaze filled with provocation, as if her helplessness was his triumph. "Keep quiet, girl," he said softly but loud enough for Maya to hear, his voice laced with contempt. People like you always make a big deal out of everything, causing trouble for everyone around. Don't you have any sense of respect? Maya felt her heart racing, each of his words slicing into her self-respect. She wanted to respond, to stand up for herself, but the stifling air and indifferent gazes around her made her feel cornered, trapped without a way out. She realized that what this man was doing wasn't just a petty argument over luggage space. This was a personal attack aimed at her very being. People like you always love causing trouble, never respecting others' space, he continued, his tone mocking and unwavering. His words felt like a direct blow to her pride, leaving her with a bitter sense of degradation. I just don't get how people can act so uncivilized. Maya looked up, her eyes reflecting a deep anger and profound sense of hurt. She knew well that these words weren't mere casual insults. They carried prejudice and discrimination, targeting both her and her community. She had faced such looks and attitudes before, but the outright hatred still pained her. His words were an unjust condemnation, and at that moment, she felt she had no means of defending herself. Maya glanced at the attendant with a faint glimmer of hope that she might intervene, recognizing the man's offensive behavior. But the attendant just stood there, eyes glued to her notepad, as if she hadn't heard a thing. She had no intention of asking the man to calm down or telling him to stop. The attendant's cold indifference left Maya feeling utterly alone and vulnerable. Maya clenched her fists, trying to steady herself, but a wave of resentment rose within her. She wasn't just dealing with a rude person, she was also facing the neglect of someone who should have been upholding safety and fairness for all passengers. Before her, she saw the embodiment of outdated prejudices, of the discrimination she had encountered throughout her life. The passengers around her started paying more attention, some shaking their heads, others merely turning away quietly. A few appeared uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. Maya could see the hesitation in their eyes, as if they wanted to say something but feared the trouble it might bring. She understood that their silence was the shield protecting the man, allowing him to freely insult her without concern. The man smirked, looking at Maya with mockery. Such a nuisance. Next time you get on a plane, remember to be polite and don't bother the people around you. His taunting words made the anger within Maya swell to the point where she could hardly contain it. But Maya remained seated, her palms clenched, her nails digging into her skin. She didn't want to lose her temper or let this man see her affected. She took a deep breath, telling herself to be patient. Yet every word he uttered poured fuel on the simmering fire within her. She was standing alone in this battle, and that isolation made her efforts feel as if they were evaporating under his victorious gaze. But just when Maya was on the verge of accepting a bitter silence, a voice from behind shattered the stifling atmosphere. Can you stop? A middle-aged woman spoke up, her voice clear and firm. She leaned toward Maya and looked directly at the man with a sharp gaze, showing no hesitation. She did nothing wrong, so why are you treating her like that? The man turned, surprised and annoyed. Clearly, he hadn't expected anyone to speak up. In the past, he had been used to people avoiding conflicts like this. But this intervention had disrupted the balance he confidently held. He frowned briefly, but quickly returned to his cold demeanor. This is a personal matter, he replied, trying to stay calm. I just want peace on this flight. Is that so? The woman didn't falter, her tone more resolute. If you want peace, then you should be the one stopping, instead of making things difficult for this young woman. She glanced at Maya as if to encourage her, then looked intently at the man, making it clear she wouldn't tolerate further insults. The woman's courage seemed to embolden the other passengers. Some began murmuring, whispering about what had happened. Maya felt a warmth rise within her as sympathetic glances turned toward her. A young passenger seated behind her leaned forward and said in a clear voice, "We all saw it, and I don't think anyone here agrees with how you treated her." Overwhelmed by the reactions from the surrounding passengers, the man began losing his initial confidence. His eyes wavered, glancing at the attendant as if seeking support. But even the attendant looked unsettled by the passengers' reactions. Her initial indifference had been replaced by a sense of awkwardness as she noticed. People were speaking up in support of Maya. She glanced at the man, then looked around. At the other passengers, seemingly unsure of what to do next. In that brief moment, Maya felt a new strength rise within her. She was no longer entirely alone. People were willing to stand up for her, to stand on the side of justice. She turned to the man, looking him straight in the eye, and spoke, her voice firmer than ever. "I'm not disturbing anyone, and I won't stay silent in the face of your insults." A few people around them began to clap, not loudly but enough to bring life to the atmosphere in the cabin. The man looked at Maya, his face momentarily pale with embarrassment, but he tried to maintain a facade of calm. He cleared his throat, saying nothing more, then turned away, attempting to ignore his mounting humiliation. But the incident didn't end there. A passenger from behind suddenly pulled out their phone and began recording the scene, making the man even more uncomfortable. He leaned over, turning his back to the camera, but it was too late. His provocation and discriminatory remarks had been witnessed and recorded. The intervention of other passengers made Maya feel as though an invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The supportive glances, the words of encouragement, all brought her the strength to face the man. She no longer felt isolated in this injustice, and the silence of the others had transformed into a wave of protection, dispelling the coldness and contempt the man had directed at her. The attendant, seeing the situation slipping out of control, decided to step in again. She tried to keep her tone gentle but firm as she said, "Sir, I ask that you keep calm and respect the other passengers on this flight. If not, I'll have to report this incident to the captain." The man suddenly froze, his eyes showing a hint of unease. Clearly, he hadn't anticipated this situation escalating beyond his control and drawing the crew's attention, especially with evidence of his behavior. After a few moments of hesitation, he reluctantly backed down, not saying another word. His face was flushed with anger, and his gaze lingered on Maya with lingering hostility. Maya sighed in relief, feeling a clear sense of her strength returning. She knew that thanks to the courage of the other passengers and her determination, she had regained her rightful respect. The man's discriminatory words and contemptuous gaze could no longer shake her. But as Maya began to feel relieved and less alone, she noticed something strange in the attendant's eyes, an attitude toward the man. It wasn't just about resolving the conflict. It seemed like there was a familiarity hidden in the way they exchanged glances, a subtle connection that Maya couldn't ignore. Maya observed quietly, her heart pounding as she realized that the attendant had not shown any discomfort toward the man as she had with Maya, even after his clear insults. Instead, whenever the others stopped paying attention, her gaze softened, almost affectionate. The attendant turned away briefly, but Maya noticed a discreet nod directed at the man, a subtle but meaningful gesture. Then the man, with a slightly smug expression, smirked and leaned toward the attendant, whispering something that Maya couldn't hear, but she saw the attendant smile and nod in response. An unsettling feeling rose in Maya's heart. Perhaps no one else noticed this, but Maya immediately understood that something was off. Their familiarity was inappropriate in this situation, and now Maya began to understand why, from the beginning, the attendant had shown indifference to her complaint, and even seemed biased toward the man. She couldn't help but wonder if they knew each other, and whether this was why the attendant had no intention of supporting her or handling the situation fairly. A young passenger nearby also noticed the unusual interaction and leaned over to whisper to Maya, "Did you see that? They look like they know each other." Maya nodded, the unease in her heart growing stronger. She began to recall every glance, every gesture of the attendant from the moment the argument had started. It seemed that the attendant had covertly sided with the man from the beginning, leaving Maya to endure everything as though she didn't deserve to be heard. The sense of betrayal left her speechless, and her anger quietly returned, stronger than ever. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Maya decided to stand up, drawing the attention of the entire cabin as she turned to the attendant, her voice calm but resolute. "I want an explanation as to why you've been siding with him, even though he's clearly insulted me. This isn't the proper way for a flight attendant to handle a situation." The attendant appeared momentarily flustered, but quickly regained her composure, offering a cold smile. "Ma'am, I'm simply trying to maintain peace on this flight. You've been bothering other passengers long enough, so I think it's best if you sit down and stay quiet." Maya met her gaze directly, disappointment and anger evident in her eyes. "Is it because I'm being disruptive, or because you're protecting someone you know?" she asked, her tone firm and fearless. The entire plane seemed to hold its breath, and a few other passengers began murmuring, exchanging surprised looks. The man suddenly interrupted, attempting to mask his annoyance. "You're just imagining things," he said, but his voice trembled, betraying his initial confidence. "You're causing trouble and bothering everyone here." Maya didn't look away from the attendant. She continued, her voice calm but full of determination. "If this is true, I have the right to demand fairness. Do you know that all our actions on this flight could be recorded? If I'm being insulted and treated unfairly, I won't stay silent." Maya's firm words made both the attendant and the man visibly tense. A few passengers began holding up their phones, not explicitly saying anything, but it was clear they were recording the whole incident. The man's initial confidence turned to unease as he glanced around, his expression betraying nervousness. The attendant, her face turning pale, realized the situation had spiraled beyond her control. The cabin atmosphere grew eerily quiet, as if the entire space was awaiting a hidden truth to be exposed. Maya sat down, her gaze fixed on the attendant and the man, both of whom had lost their initial confidence and control. In her heart, Maya felt a flicker of hope that she might be able to reclaim justice for herself, and that no one could make her feel small by staying silent and letting it pass. With patience and determination, Maya had awakened everyone, forcing the two to face what they had done. She was no longer a silent victim, but a beacon for truth and justice in the airplane cabin, under the watchful eyes of all those around her. But just as Maya felt the hope that justice would be restored, the man suddenly moved closer, each step heavy with challenge. He leaned down, staring at Maya with a fierce look, as if he wanted to submerge her in his intimidating gaze. "You have no idea who you're messing with," he hissed, his voice low and barely audible to others, as if trying to keep his words just between them. "Don't think having a few people defending you means you're off the hook." His threat felt like an icy chill cutting through the air, causing a tinge of fear to rise within Maya, but she didn't back down. She stared back at him, saying nothing, but her gaze was firm and unwavering, enough to make him momentarily falter. Struggling to regain his composure, the man turned around, looking around as if trying to cover up. He raised his voice to mask his earlier threat. "We're all here to have a peaceful flight, and she's the one causing a scene. Who does she think she is, complaining about others?" His attempt to conceal his worry was betrayed by the tremor in his voice, his initial smugness now replaced by embarrassment and confusion. The cabin grew more tense than ever. Passengers started murmuring, exchanging glances and whispers of frustration. An older woman in the row ahead turned back, speaking directly to the man. "You've been bothering her from the start, yet now you're blaming her for causing trouble?" The man froze, visibly taken aback by the public criticism. He looked around, searching for some form of support, but was met only with judging eyes. No one was silent any longer. Several passengers pulled out their phones, quietly recording this as undeniable evidence. The sounds of cameras clicking, phones turning on, made the man even more bewildered and furious. He muttered something under his breath, then returned to his seat, his face both angry and flustered. Just then, the plane's speaker crackled with a calm but firm voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. To ensure safety and order on this flight, we'll be addressing the recent situation. Please remain calm and cooperative." The announcement rang out with authority, instantly quieting the atmosphere on the plane. Maya saw the man's face turn pale. His initial confidence and defiance vanished completely. His eyes darted around, as if looking for a way out, but he had nowhere to turn. The surrounding passengers maintained their watchful gaze, recording the incident without pause. A moment later, another flight attendant, looking stern and professional, approached Maya and the man, politely but firmly requesting that they both move to the front of the cabin to meet with the captain. The man muttered something, trying to protest, but the attendant held her ground without yielding. He had no choice but to begrudgingly stand, while Maya felt a renewed sense of resolve rising within her. She stood as well, following the attendant past the rows of seats, buoyed by the silent support of those around her. A few people offered encouraging smiles, some nodding in agreement with her. At the front, the captain awaited them alongside an airport security officer they had contacted. Both Maya and the man were asked to explain the situation. The man immediately interrupted, trying to place all the blame on Maya, his voice growing agitated, but each word became more scattered and unsure as he met the captain's and security officers' piercing gazes. She's been causing trouble from the start, constantly bothering me and everyone else, the man said loudly, pointing at Maya angrily. Who does she think she is, complaining about others when I just want a peaceful flight? Maya looked at him, waiting until he finished speaking, then calmly began recounting the story from the beginning. She left out no details, from his provocation to the subtle, familiar glance he shared with the flight attendant. Everything was described in detail and clarity. She didn't need to appear angry. She allowed the truth to reveal itself through her steady words. The captain listened intently, his eyes growing serious as he grasped the nature of the situation. When Maya finished, he turned to the security officer, whispering something, then signaled for the flight attendant to approach. She looked visibly shaken, no longer confident, her eyes filled with unease. The captain requested her to explain her actions, with each question emphasizing her duty to all passengers, particularly her role in maintaining fairness. Under the captain's gaze and in the presence of everyone, the flight attendant began responding haltingly, lacking the confidence she had when confronting Maya earlier. She tried to justify her actions as keeping the flight peaceful, but the captain was not easily satisfied. He quietly continued questioning, pressing her to acknowledge her bias in disregarding the man's provocations. The man standing beside her grew increasingly uncomfortable. He shifted nervously, trying to maintain his composure, but his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. He glanced around, as if hoping someone would come to his defense, but everyone remained silent, watching closely. Finally, after a brief discussion with the security officer, the captain declared, "You both will be held accountable for your actions. We will report this incident to airport security upon landing." His words were final, leaving no room for objection. The man's mouth dropped open, seemingly unable to believe he would face consequences, but the captain's determined gaze kept him silent. The captain immediately requested the flight attendant and the man to leave the area to avoid disturbing other passengers, both left with downcast eyes under the watchful stares of those around them. A wave of murmurs spread through the cabin, and Maya could feel the support and empathy from the passengers. When she returned to her seat, Maya sat down, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from her heart. Passengers nearby smiled, nodded encouragingly, and a few even patted her shoulder in support. In that moment, Maya realized that truth and justice had prevailed, not just for herself, but for anyone who had endured injustice in silence. Maya sat there proud and resolute, feeling a lighter heart than ever before. She knew she had reclaimed not only her dignity, but also her confidence and belief in the power of unity. However, her journey was not entirely over. When the plane landed, she heard the attendant's announcement asking everyone to remain seated so airport security could carry out their duties. A soft ripple of murmurs filled the cabin. Maya felt the eyes of those around her on her, but this time with clear support and understanding. 2 airport security officers boarded immediately as the door opened, their faces stern but purposeful as they approached the man. They asked him to cooperate and follow them to answer for his behavior. The man who had once challenged and threatened Maya now looked entirely different, his eyes filled with panic and confusion, a hint of resistance but with no means to defy them. A strange silence settled over the cabin as he rose, looking around as if seeking an escape. But all he found were the watchful eyes of those who had witnessed everything. When his eyes finally met Maya's, perhaps with one last glimmer of hope, Maya calmly looked back at him, her gaze resolute. The man awkwardly turned away, bowing his head as he exited the cabin under security escort. As he left, the oppressive atmosphere that had hung over the flight seemed to dissipate. A few passengers sighed with relief, and some smiled at Maya, congratulating her on standing up for herself. But Maya knew the matter was not entirely over. Shortly after, one of the security officers approached her, his expression serious yet empathetic. He nodded slightly, saying, "Ma'am, we'll need you to give a statement on the events. We want to ensure everything is handled fairly." Maya nodded, ready to face the remaining procedures. She understood that her voice now held weight and that no one could ignore the truth. A security officer led her to a private area where she and a few volunteer witnesses would provide statements. As Maya entered the security office, a sense of peace and relief filled her heart. She no longer felt alone. People had stood with her, and now the truth was officially being heard. In the security office, Maya was seated across from a friendly female officer who listened patiently, taking detailed notes on Maya's account. Maya calmly recounted everything from start to finish, leaving no details out, from the man's provocations to the unusual familiar glance between him and the attendant. The officer nodded, jotting down notes, her eyes occasionally reflecting understanding. While Maya was giving her statement, several passengers waited outside, exchanging stories and sharing empathy for Maya. They recounted what they had witnessed, feeling outraged at the man's and attendant's behavior. A young passenger who had recorded the incident on his phone offered to submit the video as evidence. The security officer accepted the video, thanked the passenger, and reviewed it immediately. The video clearly documented the man's offensive and provocative remarks, along with the attendant's lack of responsibility, adding weight to Maya's testimony. Maya felt a wave of relief. She was no longer recounting events alone. There was irrefutable evidence. She was not just someone telling her story. The truth now had a voice of its own. The compelling evidence would force the man to face the consequences of his disrespectful and discriminatory actions. Once the statements were completed and all evidence gathered, the female officer smiled at Maya, her eyes filled with appreciation and encouragement. You did the right thing by not staying silent and standing up for yourself. People like you don't deserve such treatment, and today you've shown the strength of justice. Maya felt overwhelmed with gratitude and pride. The officer's words affirmed that her actions were justified. She understood this struggle was not just for herself, but for all those who had silently endured injustice. In that moment, Maya felt her own strength, the strength of a courageous voice that could inspire others. Meanwhile, the man was being detained by airport police, aware that with the clear evidence he couldn't avoid responsibility. He would face legal repercussions for his disrespectful and disruptive behavior. The flight attendant, who had sided with him during the flight, now faced an investigation into her bias and breach of protocol. The captain, who had observed and listened to the entire incident, promised to submit a detailed report to the airline to ensure such unprofessional conduct would not occur again. After all formalities were completed, Maya left the security office. She walked through the bustling airport feeling completely different. No longer did she feel isolated or burdened by fear or pressure. Instead, she felt peaceful and proud for standing up, for defending not only her dignity, but also the rights and justice of everyone. She knew that her actions were not just for herself, but a voice for those who had faced injustice, but didn't dare to speak out. As she stepped into the sunlight, Maya looked up at the vast sky, breathing in the air of freedom. She felt that the fight today was part of her journey, a memory of strength and determination. This was not only a personal experience, but also a reminder of the power of unity and courage. She felt renewed strength to face future challenges, and above all, she knew she would always stand up to protect herself and others when necessary. Maya left the airport feeling light and with a burning resolve, ready to embrace life with a newfound faith in justice and the power of truth. She knew this journey was far from over, but she had started it with strength and determination that nothing could shake. Reaching home, Maya couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The story was not just about confronting the man on the plane, but a symbol of the struggle for many, those who had experienced degradation and injustice, but often remained silent out of fear or lack of support. With this thought, Maya decided her story would not just exist as a memory. She wanted it to be a motivation, an inspiration for all who faced injustice. Maya began to write. She described every detail of the incident, from the man's provocations and jeers to the flight attendant's indifferent gaze. She wrote about the fear, anger, and the hope she felt when she received support from those around her. Each word was a message to those who had ever felt isolated, reminding them that they were not alone and that everyone had the strength to protect themselves. When Maya's story was shared, it quickly gained attention on social media. Comments poured in from everywhere, not just expressing empathy, but sharing similar stories. Some wrote about being mistreated in job applications, others about enduring discrimination in everyday life. Maya realized that this was not only her struggle, but the story of many others, those who had faced or were facing injustice and discrimination, but didn't know how to stand up. The powerful spread of her story led to her being invited by human rights organizations to participate in awareness programs and campaigns to protect the rights of vulnerable individuals. Maya knew this was her chance to make her experience part of a larger movement. After much thought, she decided to join, using her story to inspire and encourage others not to hesitate in standing up for themselves. In the following days, Maya began participating in seminars, sharing her story, and inspiring attendees. Each time she stood before an audience, looking into their empathetic, attentive eyes, Maya felt that her story was no longer a wound but a source of strength. She shared not only what she went through, but also lessons of courage, justice, and the power each person could bring to the community. Her sincere words sparked a powerful wave of empathy in the audience. She saw people nodding, some even shedding tears as they listened, as though they had gone through similar experiences and found comfort in Maya's words. The applause that filled the hall after each talk was not only praise, but a show of support for Maya's courage. She felt the immense power of sharing her story. It was a way of healing, not just for herself, but for those who listened. One day after a talk, a young woman approached Maya, her eyes glistening with tears and her hands clutching Maya's. "Thank you, Maya," she said, her voice trembling. "I've also endured injustice, but I was always too scared to speak up. Thanks to you, I feel stronger and know that I deserve respect." These words moved Maya deeply. She realized that every time she stood up and told her story, she was planting seeds of hope in those hurting hearts and igniting hope for those who thought they had to endure in silence. Maya knew she wasn't just fighting for herself, but inspiring hundreds, thousands of others. As time passed, Maya's story continued to spread, not just through seminars, but as an inspiration for organizations and social movements. She was invited to participate in campaigns on equality and anti-discrimination, contributing to programs to protect and raise awareness about human rights. Maya became a symbol of resilience and defiance, representing those who dared to stand up for fairness and dignity. Once, at an anti-discrimination conference, Maya stood in front of a large audience, filled with famous activists and social leaders. The spotlight shone on her face, and a sense of pride and responsibility filled her. She recounted her story, not as a victim, but as a warrior for justice and self-respect. She spoke of patience, determination, and the demand to be respected no matter who you are or where you are. After her speech, Maya received warm hugs and firm handshakes. A social leader grasped her hand, his eyes brimming with admiration. "Thank you, Maya. Your story is not just a wake-up call, but a beacon lighting the way for many others." The praise and gratitude from those around her made Maya realize her story had transcended personal boundaries to become a voice for those marginalized by society. She no longer felt she was merely an individual confronting injustice, but part of a larger movement, a wave bringing hope and determination to those who had suffered. In that journey, Maya understood her fight would never truly end. She knew she would continue to move forward and speak out, not just for herself, but for everyone enduring injustice. She would not stop because she knew each step brought society closer to a just and compassionate world. She believed that as long as one person dared to stand up, thousands more would gain the strength never to succumb to injustice. Maya knew her journey wouldn't stop with forums or sharing sessions. She understood the fight for justice and equality was a lifelong journey. But now, every step she took was no longer lonely. It was part of a growing movement, a movement not only for individual fairness, but also to defend dignity and rights for everyone. As time passed, Maya became a familiar face at human rights conferences. International organizations invited her to be a representative and speaker, where she recounted her courageous journey, inspiring thousands. At every event, from small gatherings to international stages, Maya poured her heart into spreading the message of courage, respect, and faith in justice. She realized that when she shared her story, it was not just about a personal experience, but a voice for those who had, were, and would continue to fight for their rights. Each time she stood before an audience, Maya saw countless empathetic, hopeful faces. They listened without regard for age, gender, or background, hanging on to every word with admiration and gratitude. Some had experienced injustice like Maya. Others hadn't, but understood the importance of standing up for what was right. Looking into their eyes, she saw persistence, determination, and the encouragement they offered her. Their presence gave Maya strength, helping her continue her journey with unshakable faith. In a special conference on anti-discrimination and human rights, Maya stood before a vast hall. In front of her were hundreds of people from all walks of life, including renowned activists, social leaders, and others who had faced injustice like her. When she finished her story, the hall erupted in applause. Those present stood up, a display of respect and support for Maya's brave actions. As the hall quieted, a young girl, about 15 or 16, approached Maya, her eyes shining with a mix of emotion and admiration. "Thank you, Maya," the girl said, her voice trembling but filled with sincerity. "I used to think I was too small to make a difference, but after hearing your story, I know that I have the right to speak up and be respected." Maya knelt down, taking the girl's hands, her heart overflowing with emotion. She remembered how she felt when she stood up on that plane, the initial fear, but also the inner strength she never knew she had. Standing before this girl, she felt as though she was passing on the flame of courage to a new generation, those who would continue the journey and uphold fairness for all. Maya smiled, saying softly, "Yes, you can. We all can." Not only individuals but also organizations approached Maya to collaborate on programs to protect the rights of vulnerable people who had suffered discrimination. Maya participated in awareness campaigns, appearing on television programs, giving live talks, and attending international conferences. At each appearance, she reminded everyone of the importance of justice and compassion. Maya's experiences were no longer just her story. They had become part of a global movement for equality and against injustice. Once, at a major conference in New York, she met numerous leaders from international organizations. A prominent human rights activist who had followed Maya's journey from afar approached her and shook her hand. "Ms. Maya," he said respectfully, "your story isn't just a reminder for us all, it's a guiding light. You've reminded me that each of us, no matter how big or small, has the power to change the world." These words affirmed all that Maya had done, the courage and effort she had put into her journey. His words made Maya feel that she wasn't just standing up for herself, but for all who needed justice to protect them, those who had ever felt small and abandoned in the shadows of injustice. Maya's life now was no longer about the mundane daily routines. She spent much of her time involved in programs, working with activists and social organizations to drive positive community change. She was no longer just a woman who had faced discrimination. She had become a symbol of courage, an inspiration for thousands standing up for justice. She understood that this was both her responsibility and her mission. In the years that followed, Maya continued to spread her message of courage and equality. She taught at schools, organized talks, and supported those who had experienced injustice. Maya became part of a system training young people on human rights, helping them understand they had the right to demand respect and fairness. Each story Maya told was no longer just her past, but a powerful voice for those enduring injustice and lack of dignity. One day, after a talk at a high school, a group of students approached, their eyes shining with inspiration. One boy in the group held Maya's hand, speaking confidently, "Thank you, Maya. You've helped me realize that even as an ordinary person, I can make a difference." His words moved Maya, and she knew she had helped pass the flame of courage to the younger generation, those who would continue the journey she had started. As time went on, Maya saw more clearly that her journey was not just for herself, but for everyone. She felt happiness and peace, knowing she was not just fighting for herself, but empowering many others. Maya understood that this journey would never truly end, and she would continue forward with determination and a love for justice and compassion. When Maya left the conference that day, she looked up at the vast blue sky, feeling the light breeze like a blessing. She smiled, filled with confidence in the steps ahead. She knew she would never stop, that each story, each person she met, each talk she gave would be part of the ongoing journey for justice and compassion. And that was Maya's commitment, to always speak out, always fight, and always keep moving forward so no one would have to suffer in silence. She knew the world would change, bit by bit, and she would forever be part of that journey, a journey for a better world where everyone is respected and loved. Maya's story is a powerful reminder that when we dare to stand up and speak out for justice, that strength will spread, inspiring those around us. She transformed her experience into a symbolic journey, not only defending personal rights, but contributing to a world where everyone is respected and loved. Maya's journey reminds us that no matter what challenges or injustices we face, we can make a difference. She is proof that each courageous voice will pave the way for justice, and each resilient action will kindle the flame of hope. If you found this story meaningful, please subscribe to this channel to see more inspirational content, and together, let's build a fairer and more compassionate world.